What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept of you are already what you're desiring to be, and the concept of continuously spending the here and now present moment reality in desire and want, how that actually pushes and creates a lot of resistance, which delays that state of consciousness which you're actually even wanting, and so you can look at this in many different ways. It manifests all over the place. Sometimes, through constant needing some external teacher to like, I just need more information. I need more information. I just need, what's that perspective? What's that perspective? Instead of like going within yourself and realizing that you are already awake. And so, going to teachers on this like awakening process is operating under an assumption that you're asleep. And that's how you're kind of spending your present moment. As I'm asleep, I'm trying to wake up. I'm trying to wake up. I need this help. I need this whatever. Which everybody kind of goes through spurts like that. I do, at least, and it's important to catch that, realizing when a desire is feeling separate from your identity, to immediately in the here and now incorporate that, that sensation, that feeling of, if you have already achieved that desire, how would you feel about it? Money is a really good example because there's so many attributes that people give to money. Some people want a bunch of it because it makes them feel safe. Some people want it because it makes them feel powerful. Some people use it because it makes them feel like sexually attractive. All of these different motivations, but the more that you're able to get to the root of it, it's like, okay, well, why do I need to feel safe? What about this? Because even that is an illusion of safety. So what is the real safety that exists? And a lot of that has to do with coming to terms with what is going on in your own consciousness, most of which is the narratives and the stories that you're telling yourself about scarcity concerns, fears of maybe death, fears of danger, fears of chaos, all of this types of stuff. And whatever that is in your own mind, that's what you start to let go of. And sometimes it feels uncomfortable when you face those fears, but on the other side of that is the actual what you're desiring anyway, which is not to be desiring all the time, to feel complete and whole within your own self. Because as you work on your relationship with God, it's easier and easier to realize that, oh, I don't need to figure this shit out. I don't need to every manifestation that I've ever experienced has played out in a way that's beyond the imaginings. And so I feel like that's actually a stumbling block on some level in my own self when it comes to like the law of assumption, law of attraction kind of vibe, is kind of I gotta imagine how this sensation is gonna play out. It's like, well, if I just achieve this milestone, I'll feel this particular way. Even though every time I've ever achieved a particular milestone, leveled up in consciousness, leveled up in responsibilities, leveled up in life, it's always played out differently, and so this idea that I need to imagine it in a correct way is, I feel like, an error that can start to be let go of. And as you do, it starts to be very relaxing to realize I don't have to do the work in this. I don't have to figure it out. It's already been figured out for me. I'm exactly where I need to be. And these are all examples of a new way to speak to yourself in your own mind whenever these things are triggering, whenever you're believing thoughts of separation and fear. And especially if you're experiencing like really intense situations, like somebody close to you is dying, somebody close to you is sick, somebody close to you is just having a really dramatic time, any of that kind of stuff, where you can start to waver in your faith of oneness, of like connectivity. But as they're going through their drama, it's important to check the drama going on within your own self. And are you operating from an assumption that it's already done, or what are you telling yourself? That's a big part of this, because whatever is going on, if it's a fear especially, I know with some of the drama going on with my dog, there's a lot of fear of like, oh, is this going to be the last day, is this going to be the last hour, or is this going to be, and that has been repetitively playing for days and days and days. And it's like, well, how long am I going to spend the here and now worried about this, this event that may or may not happen in the here and now. And I was like doing a job yesterday and had a really enlightening experience, because I was really concerned, about, being that far away from home just in case something was going on. I couldn't rush back to the house and, tend to her needs. Um, and in that, realizing all of these stories of like, oh, I gotta do, I gotta do, I gotta do. But when you look at like the Bible, especially in the teachings of Jesus, where his main message was on the kingdom of God, and the oneness between our Creator and the created, which is us, and so and where that location of our connection is, which is within, according to Jesus, so whenever these spiraling thoughts of fear and concern of like, what if this happens, what if that happens, what if I'm not here to help, what if I don't do that, all of those are good examples of I got to do the work, I got to do the work, and not trusting in the fact that infinite intelligence does the work, and that everything going on is playing out perfectly in this bridge of incidents, that it's already been done. It's getting out of this assumption like I need to work for a blessing to receiving the blessing now, which a lot of the times is just peace of mind. So much of like the drama that we can feel for others, and some of like the shit going on in our own mind about their health and well-being and everything else, there's a lot of resistance I feel in my own self when it comes to the idea of the body dying, because there's so much just inner conviction that death is an illusion, and how the old mindset, this old programming, is just like wants to do everything to keep the body functioning, and everything else is like the biggest tragedy. But then when you look at like Jesus, he was like willingly laid the body down. But at the same time, there's examples of like raising Lazarus from the dead after 3 days, which, I had a similar freaking experience with my dad when he was like basically on the verge of death. He was unconscious. He was not hooked up to anything. They thought he'd be dead in any minute. And after 3 days of being unconscious, we got a blessing, that they called a Christmas miracle at the hospital, where they're able to communicate, those last couple times. But even in that experience, with a different perspective, it's like I don't look at my dad as being like dead. It's like the body might not be there, but there's still this vibe of like God just pulls off the mask and merges back into the one consciousness, and that form, that relationship, expressed an attribute of our Creator that we can only learn through form. So it's like, with like my dog, for example, it's like there's like an attribute of loyalty, of like peace and calmness that is expressed by her being, that is to me a good example, of like a heavenly attribute. And you can look at everything, in creation with that kind of lens, and that was like part of the enlightening experience, was like, what do I desire for, her? It's like, do you just constantly just heal and get better and get better and get better, or just allow her the freedom to join the one consciousness again, and whatever that entails, whatever that means. It's like one of those things. I feel like we get a taste of that every day, when we sleep. The idea that our subconscious mind creates entire realms every night with people that never have seen them before. My dream life is very vivid, and has been my whole life, and it's been more and more enlightening to think about like these experiences every day. I feel like personally it's a trip to the absolute every day, and we come back to the relative to do whatever we're doing. And I think a big part of what we're doing here is bring a lot of the heaven experience, the inner heaven, to the outer world, through being. That's it. Just being the change that you wish to see. Not trying to convert people, not trying to change people, but to just accept people for where they're at, and be an example that, hey, you don't have to spend every waking moment of your day suffering in your mind. experiencing slavery in your 3D conditions, and ultimately almost like just living out a hell experience as your fears become more and more manifest unconsciously based on your own mental stories and narratives. That doesn't have to be how you experience life. And I think there's different levels of awareness of that, where you can, maybe if you're used to spending 90% of your time just in a negative spiral, well, if you spent just 5% more of your day just at peace as a starting spot, it starts moving you up the vertical dimension of reality, which I've talked about before, where it's more of an up and down, raising a vibe. But, most of that has to do with realizing that who you actually are, that God created you to be, naturally is a high vibrational being. It's all these weights of fear and beliefs of separation that hold you down. And as you face these particular fears, and ask God what to do, go within yourself, ask, believe, and receive. So believe that you'll get an answer, that you'll get help. And the more that you lose this idea of linear time, like things need to happen, I'll find out the answer on Friday type thing, or I'll find out in a couple weeks. It's like now. It's like the more that you are aware that at any moment, something can be added to your awareness that either answers that question, gets you in a position of taking divine action, which doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to make the phone ring, I'm going to do a bunch of efforting and struggle, and I'm going to battle and resist until I get my way. It has to do more about just trusting infinite intelligence to do the work, which is a freeing feeling, especially when you're dealing with maybe somebody who's dying or sick or, lost their job or, any of these dramas. Looking at whatever's going on, you can imagine them, being happy and successful, healthy as a state, because that also is going on within you. Because you can't experience another being without experiencing part of yourself. Because as you become more aware of how our physical world is reflecting back to us our beliefs and our assumptions, and most importantly, our identity in relationship with God, the more that you develop those that faith in that, the more that you see it, and the faster and faster and more obvious it's almost like it's always been like that. And it's just like you're just becoming more aware of like what's already there. Because like in like the illusions of separation, or maybe delusions is a better word, it's easy to see all of this stuff going on outside of us as separate events, random chaos. Oh, that's not connected. Oh, that's a squirrel that's not connected to that, everything is connected though, and so part of like the beliefs of fear has to do with feeling separate, and that has to do with your desires as well. Looking at like whatever you're desiring as being something outside of you, something to achieve that you're lacking internally. But what the world teaches is like, well, first you get the external thing, and then you get the inner feeling. But it's actually reversed. It's like first you embody these states of consciousness, of awareness, of heaven, and then you start to see that reflecting more and more so as you put your faith in the fact that infinite intelligence does the work. And an easy way to start to move in that direction is just to look at what is already working and functioning correctly. So it's like your heartbeat's a good example, because that's something that's beyond your conscious awareness of like, oh, I got to pump or however much, and realizing that's part of infinite intelligence that's just doing the work for you. It's effortless. You don't have to think about it. It just is what it is. And it's not until you come up with these narratives and stories that it starts to create separation and create a narrative. And a lot of times those narratives, if you believe them, you'll feel a corresponding emotion. And if that emotion feels like shit, it's a good example that shows you that belief is out of alignment with your creator, which is love. And so perfect love casts out fear. So if you're hanging on to these little scraps of fear, which I believe that as you develop more faith, the fear naturally just starts to melt away as you begin to take your hands off the wheel, trust more and more so in infinite intelligence's ability, and not get caught up in the mind of trying to imagine how you'd feel all the time. It's like if someone would ask me how would 5 years ago or 6 years ago what it would feel like to have like a handyman business and have my wife working full time at it, with our stepdaughters working at it, and is functioning very well, and is being a benefit to people in town and everything. I don't know what that would have felt like, and it's like, having experienced it now, it kind of just feels normal. It doesn't feel like anything special or anything else. It just is like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Not this big pedestal, not this big milestone even. It's cool that it's like happened. It's this, I awesome. That it's not have to depend on some 9 to 5 bullshit. All that kind of stuff. It's like, obviously I'm thankful for it, but it doesn't feel like this big pedestal achievement, like, oh, that totally changed how I'm thinking about everything. I know it's the same thing with music too. It's like music was more of a pedestal, but then it's like you hit these different milestones, and it's like, oh yeah, first time some stranger writes about you or whatever, or the first time you get a bunch of fucking haters or whatever, the same thing. It's like you just look at it and it's just like, this is not what I expected. For one, it's like, yeah, I hit that milestone, but that inner feeling, it was a temporary satisfaction followed by like doubling down, wanting to do more of it, to get that lasting type of contentment or whatever. But the thing of it is the more that you're able to bring like the kingdom of God to the here and now by just asking yourself, it's like, what is heaven, what is God's perspective of what's going on right now? What does love say about this? If you're experiencing illusion, especially, where you're experiencing a bunch of fear, drama, and chaos and whatnot, try to work more on that stillness and realize, why is a blessed child of God that I am thinking this way in the face of this? A lot of it has to do with drifting back into fear and separation and survival, and an us versus them mentality and scarcity and all of these things that are not even real. They're constructs of our mind that we've created. It feels real because we're locked in this thought stream, in the cycle of this, where it's like you feel the thought, you feel the corresponding emotion. If it's not in alignment with your creator, it feels awful. But then this feedback loop starts to happen, where it's like, first you get the beliefs, then you get the feeling, then you get the corresponding manifestation. And if you're not realizing that it's starting from within, that cycle of limitations, of limiting beliefs, and then experience, like walking the physically these thoughts manifest in the forms of people that validate that fear or whatever. It's easy to double down and just start spinning more and more down the drain, and feeling heavier, more resistance, constricted, not feeling open, not feeling any type of joy or peace. And everything's about bringing it back to catching that. When are you going to do that? Now. When are you going to choose to experience something differently? Now. And how long are you going to spend the eternal now telling yourself these limitations, these fears? If you put somebody in the same situation, they could be thinking something entirely differently. If you put me in that same situation, I'd probably be thinking totally differently about it. Especially, going through a lot of these different challenges and difficulties. Not to say that the path needs to be challenging and difficult, but in those difficult situations, realizing more and more so that there's a big level up coming that's already underway, but all these divine actions are things that get brought to you, and it's like, oh, I got to do this. It's like, oh, a baby fell on the ground and they're crying. I got to go help the baby up and make sure they're okay. Those are examples of like divine movement. It's like you just are compelled to go do it. And instead of resisting those things, this is the other thing I just noticed about my dog, is like she'd be very resistant to me trying to help her at times. Which I took symbolically, because I was guilty of doing the same things. Because even with people and all of creation, a lot of times that's mirroring stuff that you're guilty of. I don't say guilty of, but stuff that you're doing also. that you may not be able to notice it until somebody else is doing it, and it's like, what? That's annoying as shit. What the fuck? Kids do that a lot. If you're like a parent, it's like a lot of times they'll start mirroring back to you your behavior that's like unattractive, and it's like, oh, they get that from me. Ugh. Yeah, I need to change. But like in realizing like those kind of things in my own self of like, oh, look how resistant she's being. I'm trying to clean her and she's being so resistant. I'm trying to get her up so she's building strength in her legs again, and it's like she's being so resistant. And then I'm like realizing I'm like telling myself like different stories of like getting up and down. It's like same thing, but I think I'm gonna balance. So thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. Appreciate you guys spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. Till the next now, God bless.